while people are filing in, I was thinking about what I miss about seminars when you actually go to a place and meet people who you know, you meet people who you don't know, and also go to the back and there's the coffee and the things that we shouldn't eat, like donuts and crullers and those kind of things. And I thought, what are people doing now? And this is for the question area or for the chat area. What are people doing now to get anchored? The habits, the things that you do that kind of bring you comfort so that you can kind of face your day, because most of us know our day is different than it was, just 3 months back. Offer up a couple things while people are getting used to the chat section, and then we'll start to kind of share some information, and we'll act like it's a seminar and we're all sitting there. Okay, because we're not right now, as you fully well know. So I have my local coffee roaster, and I make the coffee the night before, and when I wake up, the coffee's ready, and I sit with my coffee and I read I have a subscription to the week, it's called, and they give me every day. I get the 10 things you should know today, and it's been a habit of mine that I did during the good times and now during the VUCA times. So that's something that I do. How about others? Is there a coffee, a tea, a thing that you do in the morning that helps you to kind of feel like you're going to be able to face the day?
And I think probably the best place to answer some of these questions is in that question answer section that's going to be on your control panel. So the chat feature doesn't work, I don't think, with some folks, but I know that the question answer feature on the control panel is where people can answer some of these questions. Oh, and look, we've got something coming in from Kim, and she really enjoys taking her dog for a walk in the morning. That's always a good way to start.
Yep, Luis Stratford. Thanks, Luis. And then Matt, you've got music, family, exercising, reading, and keeping busy at home. Boy, you have a pretty active set of habits. How about you, Julie? What do you do?
For me, it's getting the kids wrangled and ready for wherever it is we have to go. So it's not very relaxing or calm, but it's a cup of coffee, and then it's get up, get dressed, make the lunches, and get in the car by the right time. That's my morning routine, and I've missed that urgency that you get from the adrenaline rush of getting everybody into the car and getting ready for the day. So it's a bit different now.
Sounds like Gary kept his glass of orange juice and concentrate what he needs to do with his kids each day. Because of that, obviously that's changed, but at least that glass of orange juice is something you can count on, right? And really, when I think about it, we spend so much time talking about what's disrupted our lives. It's often useful to think about what brings us that comeback and that ability to kind of be resilient, right?
Yeah. Well, do we want to get started? We've got a nice chunk of people here at the moment, and I want to make sure we introduce our Ascend team with us today. And we've got Russ Barcelona chatting, and we've got myself, Julie Unit, and we've also got Bob Young, and we've also got Rick Bauman, who will all be helping to facilitate the workshop today and making sure that we make things go as successfully as we can. We've also got Ali and Kim, who are going to be helping with any IT issues that crop up. So if anyone's struggling to hear us or struggling with any kind of technical issues, please feel free to jot things down in that question area, and Ali and Kim can help you. We would like to try to make this as interactive a process as possible. So please feel free at any point to ask questions, to jot down comments, send us some thoughts as we're going through, because the more backwards and forwardsing of ideas that we can have, the richer this next hour can be between all of us. Russ, should we get started?
Sure, we should. Definitely.
Okay. So when we were thinking about where we've all landed after this 10, 11 weeks of being in quarantine, when we stopped and thought about it, we thought that the most impactful thing that we could do today would be to really just discuss best practices of selecting frontline supervisors, particularly thinking about it in terms of this current context that we're in of COVID. And to do that, we thought it would be good to take you through a live case study of how would you actually make a selection between two frontline supervisors. and really think through the ways in which you can demonstrate prescience or forethought to take some of the uncertainty out of our selection decisions. We're going to keep it simple today and take you kind of through those 3 steps of looking at COVID and what's that meant for how we are functioning in the workplace today. How do we select frontline leaders in order to get the best performance for them going forward?
So the last time we introduced the concept of VUCA to some folks, and some of you may have known about it, that volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And we're going to reintroduce it, but we're going to do it really quick for the folks who weren't able to join us on our first webinar. What VUCA is really kind of the type of things that are disruptive to how we make decisions, to how we live, to how we tackle problems, to how we even kind of frame and view problems. And the elements are volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. With the volatility, it's kind of an unstable environment, but some knowledge is available. You know, and I think of how the Great Recession started. We recognize how it started with the housing issues that were done, but it was uncertain as to how it would kind of close or end. With complexity, it's where there's an overwhelming kind of amount of data to sort through, and you can't figure out what factors, what information really are kind of driving the situation. When it comes to ambiguity, I like the term unknown unknowns. We don't know what we don't know. The links are unclear, and so it's ambiguous and fuzzy to us, which for some it really is kind of the most disenchanting. As far as uncertainty goes, that's where there's kind of a lack of knowledge. You may know the basic cause, what's creating the uncertainty, but you really can't figure out the effects of that, or maybe the downstream things that are going to happen when you have that information. So that kind of gives you a quick flyover of why we're talking about VUCA.
So when we think about that VUCA context, for us, it really made us think about what's it going to look like when we go back to this new work environment, this new workplace, and what are our employees going to be facing, or frontline leaders going to be facing, as they get back into this new workplace. And one step on from that, and this is the question we'd like you to consider, is what might the reactions be of frontline employees upon re-entry into this new workplace? What's it going to feel like for them? What are they going to be thinking? What are some of the new challenges that they might be coming up against as they walk into this new workplace that we're looking at as a result of COVID and VUCA and all of those things? If you could just spend a minute jotting down some ideas into that question chat section. Doesn't need to be pretty, just some quick thoughts coming through, that top of mind ideas, and we'll start trying to capture those and getting our heads into some of the things that we've been thinking about.
The nuance here is you're the frontline supervisor and your team is starting to reassemble and come back in whatever form. Where are they going to be? What's their headspace going to be as they start to re-enter?
And we've got Neil saying that everyone's got a lot of health concerns. Everyone's worried about what's it going to look like with us being so close together in one place. When we were putting this together, these are some of the areas that came to our mind straight away. There's that fearful piece. What if someone has that virus? How are we going to deal with that? How are we going to tackle that?
Yeah, I like Dixie's comment. They're nervous or not interested in returning. So I didn't really predict that one. David said that aspect of wearing masks, you know, some are pushing back, some apt to more wear them, things that go with our political climate now and how this has been politicized, you know, something as simple as wearing a mask. People will ask to continue to work from home, Louise said, you know, and the supervisor may have, depending on the organization, have a choice or may not have a choice in that matter. And then Eric said that secondary reaction is indecision. Like, I'm not sure what to do now.
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity, and wondering which workmates are going to come back and which workmates are going to stay at home. What is back to normal going to look like? Good, those are great comments. I think what we can really comfortably assume, though, is that it's going to be messy for frontline leaders as they look at this context and try to figure out how it is that they can navigate it as clearly and as efficiently and as effectively as they possibly can. For us, I'll leave you with this one.
Yep. So last time we were together, we really kind of identified what we consider to be 7 criteria to help us kind of cut through the VUCA. And when we look at leaders, these things have always been important to the selection of frontline leadership. And we pulled these out, kind of extracted them and made them even increasingly important when you look at how the reentry is going to happen and how people are going to get back to work and be productive and work as a unit, kind of working together. So a leader will need to demonstrate these qualities and put extra kind of effort into examining these qualities and differentiating between candidates once we start having people come back to the workforce. That first one is command skills, and I'll talk about that for just a second. It's really that ability to kind of garner attention, to have presence, to be able to say things with clarity and certainty and kind of force to a degree so that people feel like they want to follow and you can build that followership.
And closely behind that one is this idea of adaptability. So how can really important skill that one of these frontline supervisors are going to need is that comfort with ambiguity, that ability to change, that ability to deal with uncertainty and pivot where they need to be, not getting stuck and not being able to see past an obstacle that they might have in front of them.
Systemic thinking, this is very simple to describe. It's being able to see downstream effects, being able to see linkages, understand the resources and support that you have around you and even outside of your unit to help tackle issues and get things accomplished.
And then prioritization is closely followed behind that one. It's that ability to have the foresight to say what needs to be done, what is mission critical, how can I shut out the noise and do what needs to get done? Because there's so many different things coming in at us. There's so many different emails, so many different requests. What can we do to make sure that we prioritize what needs to get done by the end of a day, by the end of a quarter, whatever it needs to be to make sure that we get the mission critical jobs accomplished?
Empathy steps up to be very important. You've read a lot about this probably over the past several months. I go a little bit beyond that in the definition of empathy. It's not just to the individuals as they come in, but also to what's important to the whole team. And then what's the presentation of organizational empathy? How does the organization set up its policies and practices to show that we get it, we understand that your life has been disrupted, and we're doing something to make it easier for you to be productive. Disseminating information, it doesn't really need a huge amount of discussion about it, but that whole aspect of over communicating, bringing clarity, transparency. I also thought, that whole model of RACI, that the right people know what they need to know, and people also know, well, what am I supposed to do with this information? Do I have to make a decision on it, or is it just for information's sake to make me feel calmer and better about what's going on?
And this next one, creating focus, is kind of difficult to get your head around. For us, it's about being bulletproof to much of that interpersonal conflict that goes on around us when we're trying to get our jobs done. Those little niggly emails that come from people who are getting held up on something and want this from you and want that from you, and being able to see through that, focus on the results that need to get accomplished, and kind of being bulletproof to a lot of that noise that goes on from an interpersonal perspective, from the people perspective, and moving through that and creating focus and still being able to get what needs to get done. That's what we really need in these frontline supervisors, because it's so easy to get derailed at the moment. There's so many different things coming in. So our thinking here was a frontline supervisor is going to need these characteristics at any time, but they really are important in this particular time, and having them as a set of criteria can be a useful way for us to think about how we go forward in terms of selecting people. Let's have a look at our next one.
This all sounds great and theoretical and wonderful, what we've kind of came up with, but when you have to apply the rubber to the road. This is an example of what we've done and what we've applied to in a situation. And we call it a tale of two supervisors because first it was a selection decision that needed to be made. So I'm going to provide you some context. Hopefully it's not boring. I think you'll find it interesting. Please pay attention because there is a demand there for you to participate in this. So listen closely, okay? So the setup for this is the organization we were working for, it's a consumer products organization. It's like an outdoor care and leisure product type of company. Just before COVID, this was probably in November, December, they did a full organizational restructure. It's a company that's housed in Europe, and they made big changes in the United States. The changes that they made in the United States from the folks who were in the United States picture was a possible loss of at least 45% of their revenue because of the way the restructuring was going to be led, managed, and held. It was actually a company where you'd say the Europeans decided that they knew how to run business in America better than the Americans did. And it goes both ways. We've seen other companies do this before. Just before COVID-19, the global CEO who led this restructuring was asked to leave, and she did leave. And so now there's even more, what I would say, chaos that's introduced to the system besides kind of what's happening today. So a bit of a mass exodus. The job opening is in new product innovation. The manager who was in that job left. The company can't talk about why he left. And it was a he. There's an intact team. There's 15 key members in that group. They've been kind of stalemated by some of the organizational changes that were made prior to COVID-19. The leader that left was beloved. They actually really got a lot of things accomplished with the team. So there's a desperate need for them to innovate and regenerate some interest in this sector, especially now when you consider maybe people are spending more time in their backyards. Culturally, this organization, because culture is critical, right? It's a relationship-oriented, collaborative organization. It's trending that way. It's an organization where there's an aspiration to be that way, but they're probably in the teenager stage of kind of getting there. Now, as far as the group, they're a high-performing group. Last year, they had a couple patents and new product growth was 125%. So they really kind of kicked it. They won some design innovation awards for some of the furniture and different things that they brought to the outside. But since the outbreak and the loss of the supervisor, direction's been really spotty as to where this team is going. A few of the team members had family and friends that were infected by the virus. So they were directly affected by either a family member or a friend. And it really has disrupted kind of the work and life flow, as you would imagine, with children at home and older parents that you can't visit and grandchildren that you can't see. All the things that we're experiencing, these people have experienced too. There was a few issues with who got credited with all the success they had in 2019. And the expectation is in 2020 and 2021, because of the loss of revenue, there's going to be a loss of support and resources delivered to this innovation team. So that's the job opening. And we've all been there where we've had jobs where there's a lot happening and we need to introduce a new person to it to lead it. There wasn't anybody from the group who could step up. So we're going to talk about the two candidates. First of all, we have James. He is on the left side of your screen. James went to Oxford University, got his master's degree. He's known to be disciplined. He's known to be technically oriented. He's a bit of an academic thought leader in his approach to new product innovation. He's a modest person, but it's clear that he's an accomplished person. James worked at Procter & Gamble for 13 years in their product development area, so an area where he was an individual contributor. The one thing that he has that is a shining strength is he's perfected the gate process of product innovation and also been able to really drive that gate process so the right products are launched at the right time. Sabrina, who's on your right side, she went to the Columbus College of Art and Design. She's eclectic, she's quirky, she's kind of artsy in ways, kind of a creative and unstructured person from the interactions that you've had with her. A little bit showy, which doesn't always work well with some people, and more informal, much more informal than you would see from James. She's worked 6 years in Sydney, Australia, at a company called For Design. And For Design is known to be an innovator with the aesthetic nature of things. She's been an individual contributor and a supervisor, unlike James, who is just an individual contributor. She has to relocate. Her significant other has decided to move to the United States. Her claim to fame is she started agile processes with her team in 2019. Didn't get them all completed, but she launched a more agile approach to work. Covered as much ground as I possibly could in 7 minutes.
Well, you did well. So now we have all of us are faced with at different times. Who would you choose? And this is where we want to bring this poll feature in that Kim's going to help us with. The question is, who would you choose? And you've got a choice of James, Sabrina, or neither. And we're going to take a minute to let this poll come through. Russ, any other thoughts or things that you think are important for the group to be thinking about as they make their choices?
You know, it's funny because sometimes we face these situations and you want both, right? You want somehow to clone them together and take the strengths of each. So this will be an interesting poll as to how people begin to vote. So please take the time to vote. And then we're going to take a little deeper dive just from what you see, because oftentimes you've done an interview, oftentimes you've maybe really poured over the resume, especially before questioning and for an interview process.
Oh, good. Yep, we've got some nice numbers here. Russ, do you want to be the one that reveals the results?
Good. We can close the poll and kind of dive right in here. So when it comes to choices, it appears that James kind of fell a little bit short, okay?
Gosh, I'm surprised.
91% of folks chose Sabrina, and only 9% chose James.
Oh, James.
I would like to understand those votes. If anybody in the questions section might refer to why they chose James or why they chose Sabrina. What were the qualities or what were the things that you saw that made you decide upon that? That'd be helpful to us.
And following up from that, we've got 2 questions here that might give you a little bit more clarity. You know, what other information would you want from those candidates to make that decision and to feel really comfortable about it?
And some people said we have organizational fit. Someone said that James felt rather staid, you know, maybe in his profile. And that's an interesting comment because we need to talk about how that plays out. Dave said, feels like the company needs inspirational, fun, innovative kind of a approach. Sabrina, because her depth of information and innovation and ability to see the whole picture was something that was picked up by Sharif. And again, Dixie mentioned organizational fit. Some of those things really do register. And then then when you think about what this person's going to face upon reentry, you know, this team being in this chaotic state, we probably got to think about what pulls them together, right? So good, very good. That's excellent.
Yeah, nice to see everybody thinking.
So we have a group of people though who really have a very clear picture of who they would choose. 91 to 9. That's interesting. But the part about that is that upon choosing Sabrina and choosing James, you kind of step back and you have to think about what you still don't know. And what you still don't know maybe about what that downstream effect of that selection is going to be, what also maybe you could expect would go very well, and what you might expect might not go as well because of the choice that you made. And so in order to kind of put that lens on and tighten the lens so the picture becomes clearer as to, you know, what can we expect? What will it look like if we hire James? What will it look like if we hire Sabrina? What will they need? that's where we're kind of going to put our focus now. So I'll switch over to Bob.
Yeah, I too am a little shocked at the landslide that just occurred. But it'll be interesting to see after the assessment tools and the reveal of some of the assessment tools, whether anybody in the audience might change their mind. We'll see. Stay tuned. So there's a lot of dense content that I'm going to be covering here. So I'll ask Russ and Julie if you could kind of monitor the questions as we go through this, because we do want to make this interactive, and this is going to be kind of a meaty section where we talk about best practices, our recommendations in an assessment methodology. So do pipe in if there are questions coming in, Russ and Julie. So we all know there's a wide assortment of assessment tools and techniques out there designed to help you evaluate candidates, right? And I'm sure we all know some people who have their favored personality assessment, their favored interview question that they always have to ask, or an experiential test, like we're going to take the candidate out to dinner and see how they behave, with the wait staff and that sort of thing. And often those are predicated on the view that if I can just uncover this one specific trait, like approachability or confidence, I can predict who's going to be the best choice, right? And so, often the fatal flaw in that is you're using one trait and one source. So for us, rather than go that route, we've chosen to follow an approach that's called the multi-trait, multi-method approach as a best practice. So what this means is that we base our predictions of fit to the role, fit to the culture of the organization, and the expected future potential for each candidate on a number of success criteria. So as Russ and Julie already covered earlier, in the case of frontline leaders in a VUCA world, we have 7 very specific areas that we want to examine. And as you can see on the slide in front of you, with 5 specific assessment tools. And all of that's to increase our predictive power, our prescience, and helping our client make this decision. So, it's understandable that you may not have all 5 of these at your disposal, but hopefully this multi-trait, multi-method approach kind of gives you the idea that it's in your best interest to have more than one source and not get too locked in on any one particular trait that happens to be kind of your pet trait. No matter how much experience you feel you have, it's better to do the due diligence and assess across multiple assessment tools. So you're probably asking yourself, why these 5 that you see in front of you? What's so special about them? Well, we're glad you asked, because we really feel like we've done some good homework and research on tools and techniques of assessment. That's our bailiwick of what we do for a living. And we found some really good reasons behind the selections that you see in front of you. So I'll just quickly take you through them. The digital in-basket. So this is really a real world simulation of on-the-job problem solving, decision making, judgment, and a host of other features that you just can't get any other way other than put the person in the job on probation, right? And we all know how painful that can be if you have to exit the person after probation. And in some cases, like with James in our example, they may not have been a frontline leader before. So how do you know if they've got the right stuff when you can't draw from that out of their history, or their experience, or any type of learning in the past? So the digital in-basket is a really valuable tool to have in your quiver. The driver's assessment, really important, because you need to know what truly matters to people. What wakes them up in the morning? And how are these things available to your candidate in your organization in the existing corporate culture, right? Because as we all know, the existing culture doesn't always match the aspirational culture, as Russ had referenced earlier in our case study. We have an aspiring organization, but they're not there yet. Russ referred to it as they're in their teenage years of developing into that aspirational culture. So the driver analysis is going to give you a really good clue as to what that might look like for each candidate. Personality assessment. We're all probably very, very familiar with personality assessments. They're a good window into a candidate's style, their preferences, some of their behavioral tendencies, whether it be social, emotional, work style, or management style. And all of these provide you with a valuable hypothesis. And I emphasize that word because you really need to go into your interview, go into the other assessment tools, and back up that hypothesis, and not just take one score, one scale within the personality measure and say you've got the Holy Grail. Next, the leadership behavioral interview, because research has continually supported the idea that history is the best predictor of future behavior. Above all other things, it tends to have higher statistical power and prediction. So therefore, it's really important to dig into the career history of your candidate, both for the what and for the how. And that's really important to dig into how their accomplishments, their learning experiences have come together to produce the leader that you see in front of you. And then last but not least, definitely not least, is cognitive assessment. Because there's no way to fake aptitude and problem solving ability when it's measured with an objective, well-normed assessment. So essentially you're looking to see if they have that raw horsepower that's required to meet the demands of the role. All right, so with that in mind, are there any questions that have come through so far, Julie, Russ?
I think you did a great job, Bob. It makes complete sense. We didn't have any.
Okay, all right, well, jump in here, folks, if you do. We're gonna go through James' profile first, looking through the lens of each of those 5 different assessment tools. And I'm gonna give you a picture as to how they did and how we scored them, and some of the symbols here I'll be explaining as we go along. So for James, in the first column of command skills, you see a green check mark. So this came from seeing James take unpopular stands and encouraging tough debate in the in-basket exercise. So right away, we had some good examples of James going to town on command skills. However, they may have been a bit too frequent and a bit too harsh at times, so we got to keep that in mind. On the personality measure, we saw James had high dominance and competitive drive on the personality measure. So again, check mark there. And then through the interview, again, a lot of confirmational data from asking James about his live experience when he did have a chance to be in command. And again, just a little slight extra ounce for James on that from the examples that he gave. Now you see the red X for adaptability, and that comes from James having a weak personality score on flexibility and adaptability. So that was our first hypothesis where we went, okay, we better look into that further on adaptability for James. We also saw an observation of James performing cognitive ability tasks that he had a bit of rigidity to them. As he had to adjust his problem solving style, there was a gap in time there. There was a little struggle for James as he had to change his methodologies to something new. And then so we further backed that up in the interview when we asked James about adjusting to certain organizational changes in his previous company. And that was a bit of a struggle for James. So we went ahead confidently with the red X there. And then the next icon you see is systemic thinking. And you see the green check mark there. Again, James rocked on the in-basket. And he had strong integration of the materials that were presented, the data, the organizational chart, the different memos coming at him all at once. He did a really good job of synthesizing the data and coming up with pretty strong conclusions. He also had good examples in the interview of where he had solved problems in the past on the job, pulling together various resources of information, data sources, people, charts, graphs, information. Pretty sharp cookie in that regard. Prioritization, you see the green check mark there for James. He had strong responsibility and self-discipline scores on the personality measure. His driver analysis showed a high drive for productivity and execution. Again, we also saw in the interview, James is somebody that uses very practical prioritization and project management tools, so a definite check mark there. With empathy, you see the partially charged batter, that's our icon there. So a bit in the moderate range. So with empathy, there was a low to moderate empathy and sensitivity score for James on the personality measure. On the drive assessment, he had a low harmony and low relational drivers and higher on execution, as we've mentioned earlier. Really a predominance in the interview of James talking about tasks versus people, and really having a hard time kind of adjusting his style, his approach based upon the needs and the concerns of other team members. So, you know, we probably even could have gone between the half charge battery and almost an X on that one, a red X. But on disseminating information, definite green check for James. High amount of informing, documenting, disseminating information all throughout the in-basket. One of the most robust in-baskets that we've ever scored. High drivers for wisdom and insight. And during the interview, he talked about his real love, his real passion for sharing publicly his wisdom and his insights gained throughout his career and his time at Oxford, etc. And then finally, on creating focus, again, a red check mark for James. High scores on delegation and directing others within the in-basket. And again, a little bit overboard at times on the directing others and delegating, quite frankly. And he showed high resourcefulness on the personality measure. And again, all confirmed through the interview. So that's James. And next, we'll take a look at Sabrina.
One thing I might add, Bob, is empathy can be overdone too. And the one element that James added was an ability to bring some objectivity to personnel and to decisions about people. So while he appeared low in it, there was hints of that, which isn't all bad.
Right, exactly, I would agree. So let's take a look at Sabrina next. So again, using the same icons, command skills first, the half-charged battery, moderate dominance score for Sabrina, meaning her competitive drive is about average-ish, and she tended to lean more heavily on a collaborative and consensus-oriented style of leading others throughout the interview and throughout the in-basket. So moderate on that. For adaptability, a definite green check mark. Very, very high flexibility score and on the personality measure, and very low rigidity and a high amount of adaptability shown during her problem-solving activities. As she was thrown curveballs by the increasing demands of the cognitive task, she just got right in there and adapted real quickly. Some of the fastest processing speed times that we saw, so definite green check there. Systemic thinking, you see the half-charged battery, moderate average degree of synthesizing the information throughout the in-basket, pretty decent responses, but might have missed a few opportunities there. And interestingly, in the interview, she showed some siloed thinking regarding her function within the organization, a little bit naive about the whole interplay between different functions of the organization and the politics. On prioritization, partial again, Sabrina showed some moderate responsibility score, but as Russ has already indicated, her drivers are a little bit more on the creativity and innovation than productivity and execution. And when we asked her about her style within the interview of managing projects, a lot more spontaneous and intuitive, quick to react to nuances, but not as structured and drilled down. And then for empathy, definite green check, very strong empathy scores on the personality measure, very good sensitivity without being too naive, caring on the in-basket responses that came through loud and clear. And with evidence in the interview, what we really were struck by was her ability to gauge the needs and concerns of her direct reports and her peers and her bosses and really all the key stakeholders. So a definite green check. Disseminating information, also green. She displayed very strong informing and inclusion within the in-basket, definite drivers of collaboration and inclusion, and a lot of evidence in the interview of Sabrina keeping people in the loop with constant and consistent methods of communication and the intervals of communication. So confident check there. Creating focus, again, a green check for Sabrina. A very clear sense of focus and energy in the in-basket, used her time productively, helped get others onto the mission, as was indicated in one of the, I think it was David's response to us, a mission-driven exciting, energetic focus of bringing people together throughout the interview, throughout the in-basket. So, any questions at this point from our audience? Maybe we can put up both candidates side by side.
One of the nuances, Bob, of the adaptability is maybe that changing for change's sake that can come out.
Too much of a good thing could be a bad thing, right? Could be a liability.
Yep. You know, being very thoughtful about how do you figure out when they started projects and when did they begin and kind of pick up on another project. Was it 70% done? Was it 90% done before they left it? Those type of things that you would dig into as to how they left an in-basket issue that was a priority. And one thing I like what you said too, Bob, that whole aspect of having empathy with or without naivety, because empathy with naivety can really be a problem.
Yeah, or empathy instead of the wimpathy, right? You sympathetic to people's needs and concerns. You can easily be bamboozled, right?
Yeah, Bob, what was that new word that you just said? I don't think I can put that in a report though.
There you go. Any questions coming through? Because this is, again, what we wanted to enlighten you with a little bit on how this multi-trait, multi-method comes together and how the different tools in the assessment feed into the predictive power in making such a critical decision.
Actually, we have some really good ones.
All right.
This reinforces choice of Sabrina for a variety of reasons. Eric asked a great question. How strongly does the organization rate each of the criteria? Presumably not all items are equal. That's a very good question.
Yeah, especially since you got to consider culture, right? You have to weigh certain items with a heavier weight than other ones. And also the question we get a lot of times is that coachable? I know it's low or moderate, but relative to the other factors on the 7 factors, how coachable is that skill if we do bring the person on, right?
Right. Eric, good point, because some of those factors really lay into the whole aspect of the person's potential. Because this selection is being made today, but you're acquiring talent that you want to develop and probably grow, especially in an organization where there's been disruption and a variety of people have, and much of the talent may have left or is planning on leaving. So I think things in relationship to adaptability would be weighed highly. That whole aspect of systemic thinking, if you struggle with that, that would be probably something that would be highlighted.
The question of the hiring manager and human resources, how soon might there be some turnover in this person's boss, right? Because do they need to be ready in a year, 2 years, 3 years? Or is that new leader that they need to come in and just be patient? Sometimes we get that. Is this person going to be patient to stay in the role for a sufficient amount of time before needing to be promoted?
Yep, very true.
You don't want to over select. So I guess we've kept it in suspense a while. As an audience, you're probably wondering who we recommended, James or Sabrina, and how would the scenarios turn out in either choice. So I'm going to turn it over to Russ, and he'll describe how we partnered with this organization to help them make the decision.
So this is really an interesting selection in many respects. It's also interesting that 91% of you chose Sabrina. Sabrina was our choice for a variety of reasons, and it also turned out to be the organization's choice too. But I'd like to just dive in a little bit more and talk about, upon Sabrina joining the team, once that decision was made, a lot of effort was put into examining, so what could go really right and what could go really wrong early on in Sabrina's tenure. With the amount of chaos that was happening with the team, in the situation that we gave you, her flexibility, her adaptability. Someone mentioned that it was a turnoff to a degree that she appeared a bit showy, for her own sake, because that could be seen as a moderate arrogance or a moderate kind of a feeling of self-importance. There was probably a real need to buffer that and to help her to demonstrate humility And so some of the onboarding that we focused on was really to kind of inoculate those early on issues that could really be disruptive. A few people mentioned that the choice of James was really because during an unstructured, chaotic time, he was someone who would bring structure, would bring certainty and organization to things probably quicker, as evidenced by his stock was not all the way down just because of adaptability being down, because people, just like your kids, when they wake up in the morning, they want that structure to come back to because it's something that's, kind of soothing, rewarding, and helps them have a foundation to act out of. And Sabrina's not likely to do that as well. So really kind of emphasizing how can the organization support the choice of Sabrina because of the other qualities that she brings, that aspect of knowing where people are at, that aspect of being relational and understanding how to work most effectively across the organization with the other divisions and groups, and kind of being someone who has a presence, enough of a presence to be able to be friendly, informal, and build those relationships sooner, quicker, with a little bit more of the kind of tentacles that you need so that people feel like they're a part of that organization, part of what you are trying to accomplish in product innovation. That prescience that we show is really important. It's fueled by our scientific rigor that we put into the instruments and the assessments that we build. It's also fueled by just our experience and our intuition, because we've seen some of these things before. And it helps us to really look at whatever choice is being made, how do we support it? And how do we make sure that it sticks, that the selection sticks and the organization gets the benefit of the time and effort they put in to replace the beloved leader in this case. Kind of gives you a sense of where we're at. So any things that people think about? Dave says still need to think about employee retention. Sabrina feels like a collaborative consensus builder, and many times those are the type of folks that people are drawn to them, which is a good comment. And I think that's probably true of Sabrina. You want that closeness sooner because of people's uncertainty of where they're at and what's next. Good. I'll turn it over towards any other comments or any other things that people have.
So what was the bottom line, Russ?
The bottom line, another comment came in, is they really kind of felt that agile approach to, coming back to this workforce might be more important. And we kind of saw that too, in essence, because these are creative types who don't like a lot of parameters drawn around them. So just like we said that structure could be valuable, it could be overdone. And if you handcuff people who are creative and they're independent, which most of these 15 people in this group were, you could have some very solid after effects and issues that could come from that.
Yeah. So I think for us, when we're going through a selection process like this, the key differentiators that we're looking for is, and what we've taken you through, is the fit to the role. Can they do the job? The fit to the culture. As Russ just said, this is a creative group. Put the wrong person in there and you're not going to get a fit. And then the other piece, which Russ and Bob have talked about, is that potential for growth. Can this person be coached? Can they learn? Do they want to grow? Do they want to fit in and integrate? And we have to be so careful not to get romanced by, a pretty resume or a really good presentation or a really, glowing or positive predictive index that we've all seen, and really make sure that we're thinking about these key differentiators in order to make a good selection decision. And I hope that we've given you a little bit of insight into how we make that decision and some of the ingredients that goes into some of our thinking. Anything else, guys, that you want to add before we move on? We've got a couple of minutes left, just from looking at my timer. We've got 5 minutes left.
Gary says the profile results mimic what we know a lot about generational approaches. That's a really good comment. There was a difference in experience of both of these candidates that came in. And of course, we didn't really lay out with the 15 team members, kind of their demographics, but it was a mix of demographics at the time, where you had some folks who had been in the organization for a while and some new selections that were made into those individual contributor roles in product innovation.
Good. On behalf of the entire Ascend Talent Strategies team, we'd like to thank you for being part of this dialogue, for your contributions to the topic. We always learn more out of these than we deliver, and we certainly hope that you gain something from attending as well. We know you have many choices of webinars to attend these days during the lockdown. We're inundated with them in our inboxes, I'm sure, and we sincerely appreciate the fact that each of you chose to attend this one. If you enjoyed this content today and you know of others who might enjoy it and benefit from it, but they weren't able to attend, stay tuned, because we're going to be distributing a recording very soon.
And if you have any other questions or anything in particular that you want to sort of touch base with, you've got email addresses, you've got our phone number is there, and also our website. And a huge thank you to Christine Nicometto from Tech Forum Consulting for helping us, hopefully making these slides as interesting and as interactive and easy to understand as they possibly can be. I think we're doing well on time, guys. Anything else coming through on the chats?
Just some comments about how I knew it was Sabrina all along, or boy, I'm really disappointed that we didn't get James. So that's good that we wrapped it up that way.
Good. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Great to see or hear you or see your presence on here, and we hope to see you again when we put on another webinar.